Hello and welcome to a podcast about living in Tampere or the surrounding area Pirkanmaa as a foreigner. Today we are speaking about what it is actually like to live here in terms of maybe what does it feel like, not the official things that Visit Tampere or Business Tampere or any of the very good websites with information will tell you about, but more about kind of the feeling. And with me I have Ashley von Schulman and Henri Annala, and they'll tell a bit more about themselves soon. But according to data, we are supposed to be the most livable or likable city in the happiest country of the world, which for a Finnish person sounds very, very not true and not believable in any way. But Ashley, is there something that could be maybe true about that?
Yeah, I think so. And it's funny because when you're an international living in Finland or in Tampere and people realize that you're not Finnish and they go, well, why? Why are you here? That's the immediate, and there's only like work, studies, or marriage. Those are the only three acceptable answers. Otherwise they go like, why? And I think that Finns do really value their country. They just can't see it from an outside perspective. But there is so much to be offered here, and I mean, I've been here for over a decade, so clearly there's enough to keep me here. But I think that there is an authenticity, and that's the heart of it, and everything kind of stems from that, whether it's just the way that daily life runs or the systems of society, but really it just comes to, I think, the heart, and there is a really deep authenticity that permeates the culture.
Henri, you work as an international student coordinator and a lecturer at a local university, so you get to see a lot of first reactions to Finland, maybe. So what can you tell us about those?
Yeah, so I work at Tampere University of Applied Sciences, and in my daily work I see a lot of exchange students and also foreign degree students, and of course staff members coming from other countries as well, and interact with them quite a bit. And Tampere is actually quite an international student city. To give you some numbers, we have on a yearly basis, and now I'm talking about like normal years, not the corona year.
Yeah.
We get both of the two big universities together, Tampere University and Tampere University of Applied Sciences. We get around 1,500 exchange students every year, and then there are also 2,000 foreign degree students, so almost 4,000 foreign students every year, so that's quite a bit. And yeah, I do get a lot of these like first reactions, and of course they vary a lot depending on like where the people are coming from. If they come from another European country, then the culture shock might not be that big. But if they come from a very different culture, let's say from Asia or Africa, then they might be like really at a complete loss, like how am I supposed to be doing stuff here, and it can be also the first time for them living alone, because they might come from a culture where it's perfectly normal to live with your parents when you're doing your university studies. I mean, that's not what we usually do in Finland, but
Yeah, I mean, that age you get your first own apartment in south of Europe is, I think, almost 15 years later.
Yeah, so there's a lot to learn for them when they come here, and it's definitely one of those experiences in life that teaches you a lot. But often the first few weeks go to learning the basics, how everything is supposed to be going, and what am I supposed to be doing with my studies, where can I see my schedules, and all these kind of very practical questions.
Yeah, the closest little is always very important for.
Yeah.
But for my background, I'm Juho Leppänen. I'm an entrepreneur, and basically I have also been an immigrant outside of Finland for 10 years of my life, in different kind of age groups, but mostly under the 20 age. So I have a kind of a look into what it is to live in the different culture. And in the company we run, we have a lot of people coming from outside of Finland, some permanently and some for summer internships. And I've been basically hosting 10, 15, 20 guys that have been living in Tampere for short periods during the last few years. So I've gotten a bit of the taste of what is actually fun or exceptional in Finland. And there's obviously cultural issues. And this is the kind of the first part I want to emphasize on this. And even though you said that the culture shock might be harder for Asians, I would still think that in a way Finland might be closer to the Japanese culture than the Spanish culture.
That's also true, and it's kind of hard to make these generalizations that, Asia is it's of course a really big area, and, a lot of different cultures, so it depends a lot on, where you come from. And as you mentioned, Japanese people, they often feel like really, this is like being at home almost, so in a way, that's true.
And obviously with the EU, you're free to come from basically anywhere in Europe to Finland, and that leads into some kind of surprises, let's say. And what people don't figure out is that only 60 years ago we were still a rural country with basically almost no connections to the outside world. So in one generation we've become, just to give an idea of what it actually the climate and the geography has made in Finland, it's basically a village in the south of Europe is, a village in the center and a farmland outside. And then for the day you go work on the fields and then you come back. And in Finland it's just everyone put their house in the middle of their land so that they're as far as possible from the others. That's not the actual reason. The reason is that it's much more efficient for the short summer to collect all you need for the long winter to survive for the winter. So if you just warm with wood everything from your drinking water to your house, you need a lot of wood.
By the way, that still comes from the exchange students, like how to survive the winter. That's the same question still.
Now it's quite easy because there's heating from the wall. But back in the day, we basically didn't get to meet strangers. There was no strangers, there were no travelers around Finland, because where would you travel to? And what would you do? So there's this kind of big crust built around the communities, which are quite small. So obviously you would know that the people 10 houses that way and the other people 10 houses that way, but that's about it. You wouldn't know that much more. And then anyone coming from outside of it would be kind of something very suspectable, and you would look at them in a funny way. And it has affected everything, the way we talk, the way we communicate, and Ashley, you've actually come from a more how would I call
extroverted culture.
Yes. Do you have any fun examples of this?
Yeah. So when I first came to Finland, I was an exchange student, but I was in high school, so I did 1 year of lukio here in a very, very small town. And when I was choosing my country, I was 17 and naive and wanted to just have an adventure. So I said to my guidance counselor, send me somewhere I would never choose to go on vacation. So that's how I ended up here. And it's very true that this never would have been one of my first choices. And so there was so many things that I learned at the beginning with just not understanding how people communicated with one another. Where I'm from, in a very small town in Canada, people will tell you what they had for breakfast in the morning when you see them at the grocery store. And when I showed up to my first day of high school here, not a single person talked to me. And so I really quickly learned that I needed to try and figure out how to communicate. And there are so many nuances that you can only kind of learn through experience. And one of the funniest things for me was just learning how respectful people are of space, that's still very, very present. In the physical distance, yes, but also in communication and distance. And so I would be talking to somebody, and in Canada and in North America, we have this culture of kind of interrupting people, right? We're speaking to be heard, not speaking to hear. So you talk, and then you basically just wait until you have something really good to say and interrupt the other person. But we're used to that, so we're not even really offended by it. So I would be talking to someone here in Finland, and I would tell my story, and they would be looking at me directly in the eyes, which was super uncomfortable as it is. And I would get to the end of my story and slow down my cadence because I was just trying to give them an opportunity to interrupt me, but they would not interrupt me because they were Finnish and super respectful. So I would be like, shoot, they ain't saying anything. So I'd find another story and then pick back up and start talking. And I think they must have been looking at me like, when is this girl going to shut up? But yeah, there's only some things that you can learn from trial and error.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I didn't want to interrupt
you didn't want to
story.
Okay, yeah.
No, just messing with you. Henri, do you find this like this kind of Finnish distance and space? How do you find it in your daily life? Is it funny for you? Like you're not a typical. You're not a typical Finn, and I'm not probably a typical Finn. But does it make you laugh every now and then?
Yes, it does. I mean, it's this is one of the things. I mean, we've all seen the memes of like the Finnish people. The bus stop means like keeping this 5-meter distance at the bus stop, and also this joke that when Corona is over, then we can get back to the normal 5-meter distance, and now we have to be like 2 meters safe distance. So it's the other way around. But of course, I find it a bit funny, and I think that it really is something that puzzles many of the exchange students and foreign degree students at first as well. I mean, for example, if you go on a bus, you see that there's like one person sitting in each pair of the benches, and then
it is unacceptable to sit near another person if there is a double seat available.
If there is a free double seat, you don't go and sit next to anyone else, and that's like one of these unwritten rules that you have to know when you come here, and they're like really okay, why is that, like what's the reason, and they might come and sit next to somebody, and then that somebody will just look at them like what are you doing? And if you sit so that you actually touch the other person a bit, then that's super dangerous. You've
all like sitting on, if you're on the aisle seat, you kind of have to like sit half on the seat so that you leave.
Yeah, but at the same time, of course, we're kind of like laughing at these things, and they are fun. But just to keep in mind that these are like heavily stereotyped things, and stereotypes are always like overgeneralizations. They do have some, things behind them. Although I mean, a lot of people also think about stereotypes. They consider that it's a stereotype, so therefore it's not true. But there's usually something behind the stereotypes that makes sense, and there has been like a lot of research done on these like cultural features of different countries and cultures, and there's like a lot of it boils down to values, like what kind of values are shared by people in a certain culture, and there are similarities, and they explain a lot of the behavior that takes place. So it's an area that has been studied like a lot, and therefore it's really interesting to kind of like look at these features. Okay, it seems to be happening more often here than in some other countries. So, what's the reason behind that? And how this is understood is actually what differs between different cultures. And this is where we come to, for example, the fact that, you just mentioned that, nobody interrupts you, and Finns are more comfortable in being quiet in a conversation. So from the Finns' point of view, it's like the foreigners, they are like, they don't respect sort of like the turn-taking function, and then the Finns, then the foreigners think that Finns don't want to talk because they're not interrupting me. So there's always this like the two sides of the coin that depends on where you look at it.
Yeah, and I mean Finland, we don't talk about our culture that much, and it's not. it's not something we even identify. Like, we're not French and understand what's good about our culture or what is bad about our culture, and we don't necessarily understand that we are doing something odd. But I guess it boils again down to the kind of geographic realities that every family had to manage on their own. So if you disturb anyone else's tasks, be it by honking in the street, that's no in Finland. You disturb people, and people jump if you honk, or being it by just cutting their conversation. It is disturbing others and at their tasks, and that is something that it's a kind of a very hard crust around a bread on like. Every Finnish person is kind of a crust, but then on the other side of it is basically this, that underneath that hard crust there is something soft, and that's the whatever community, family you call it yourself, the ones that were living under the same roof, or the ones in the 10 houses that way and 10 houses this way kind of community. What does it feel like, Ashley, when someone in Finland lets you through the crust?
Well, I think what both of you were saying about what is underneath all of it, and what Henri was saying about the values, they are very easy to find if you look for them. Behind any Finnish stereotype, it doesn't take a lot of guesswork to see the value that's underneath. And so there's a lot of respect and value towards other people's time and resources, just like you were saying. And so other people, they put up this barrier because they don't necessarily know what you're capable of. They don't necessarily know how to interact with you, and they want to respect your space too. So it's first understanding that the other person is not trying to shut you out. They're actually just trying to give you your own space and give you your respect. So when you are let in, when you create enough of a mutual connection, when you have those shared experiences, that shared vulnerability with one another, your family, and they're going to be there for you when you're in trouble. They're going to show up when you need any kind of assistance. They're going to be there, and you create a bond that is so much stronger. And going back to when I was an exchange student, there was a Japanese student in my hometown in Canada, and when she showed up, everybody was inviting her to parties. She was like the new shiny toy. Everybody wanted to play with her. And then she visited my family about halfway through her exchange, and she said to my mom, like, nobody invites me anywhere anymore. Because it was only fun while she was new. Whereas my experience was very different. I had no friends for like 3/4 of my exchange. And then at the end, the ones that I made, I'm still extremely close with them. They were in my wedding, and they last. So it is kind of difficult to get to that point. But they're relationships that are extremely, extremely strong.
A funny thing about me and Henri is that technically our family heritage goes back hundreds of years to 2 rivaling villages that are 15 kilometers next to each other. So if this would have been 150 years ago, we would have met only by a knife fight, basically, because you were from the outside and we were from the inside. It was only 15 kilometers, but there was a circle of trust in between. And you've been out of Kihniö for a generation, like I have been out of Kurjankylä for a generation. But what do you feel about kind of this?
This this village mentality. I think that this knife fighting reminds me of a nice story. I once spent a summer in Umeå in Sweden, and being a good Finn, I was very curious about what Swedish people think about us Finns, and that's also by the way, one of the features, a really Finnish feature, that we're really interested in what the others think about us, you know? Even though we don't necessarily talk about our own culture, with other Finnish people, we are really curious to see how the others view us.
Yeah.
And so as I was there, and you know, whenever I met people and talked with them, I asked, okay, what do you think about, how do you see us Finns, you know? What are we like in your opinion? And the funny thing was that I got like almost identical responses from everybody. They mentioned 3 things. First of them was that, you know, you're quite shy and quiet. And the second one was that, okay, you drink a lot of alcohol. So that was the second. And the third one, that you always carry a knife with you. And I was like, what? I don't have a knife on me right now. You don't have to be afraid, you know. No, I don't have a knife. And you know, everybody kept telling me this, that, you know, Finnish people, you always have a knife with you, don't you? You know, show me your knife. You know, I don't have it. And till this day, I don't know where that came from. I have some theories, but you know, it was quite surprising to see that this kind of like, this sort of like weird conception was still like pretty much alive, you know, in Sweden, in Umeå at least, I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, in Sweden it used to be where Finnish people first went out of Finland, and there's a lot of Finnish people in Sweden. There's over 500,000 million of them, and we were basically the kind of the working, the thing that feeds the factories, basically. In the 50s, 60s, and even I think up until the 80s. So it's they are very different cultures, Sweden, and like, yes, Finland is the part of Nordics, but it's not a part of Scandinavia, I would say. Like there is a very big difference if you get your exchange student in Sweden than Finland, in terms of not just the language, but in terms of mentality.
Yeah, and also coming back to this like small town or village mentality, I think that, and also coming back to Tampere, I think that one of the best things about Tampere and being here as a foreigner and also as a Finn is that I think that people here still have this like small town mentality. It's you know, becoming bigger each year, but still I think that the atmosphere and the sort of like how people are, I think it's really laid back and really like down to earth compared to other big cities. For example, well, I'm not going to start mentioning any particular cities, but you know, it's a nice place to live in. Yeah, so that's what I always tell the exchange students, that you know, you couldn't have chosen better. You know, if you're coming to Finland, then you know, Tampere is the place to be.
Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. When I moved back officially, like to stay, we were first in Helsinki, and there's so many wonderful things about Helsinki, and there's so much to do and so much to kind of see, but people kind of know that it's a big city and it has that busy city vibe. And so even though people might smile at you, talk to you, be polite to you, it was much harder to make real relationships because people were so just in their own lane. And so when we found out that we needed to move to Tampere, I was not excited, basically because I just didn't want to start over again. I was like, it took me so long to get like the couple of friends that I do have. I don't want to do this again. But it was a really different experience. It was so easy to make friends. People were inviting us, they welcomed us. And that was a really big shock for me because I had fought and struggled for at least 3 years. And then all of a sudden I came here and people were like, oh, hey, welcome. And I was like, what's happening? But like you said, Tampere is growing every year. I've been here for about 8 years now, and the difference between when I moved here and now, there is so much more culture. There's more things to do. There's some good coffee here in the city now. So it has all of the features of a city, all the conveniences of a city, but it is very small town feel and very friendly and warm.
And I mean, even just commuting never takes real time.
No, everything, it's compact. It's a very compact city.
Yeah, and it's also, I would say, for children and living with children. I mean, we all 3 have small children. It's a more exciting city maybe than Helsinki. Or like I got brought up in Vantaa and the dodgy side of Vantaa, and then like I moved here 10 years ago, so I'm also basically in Tampere. Everyone is brought in by the train, like they say. Like there's very few people who have been here for several generations, and it's a kind of nice vibe to you know, send a first grader to school alone. And there are the things. What are things, Ashley, that you find that, I don't know, from social media or something, that if you would post about them, people would be like, "What? You can do that with children in Finland?"
My parents lost their minds when they learned that I let my kids sleep outside in a stroller in the dead of, well, alone, like at any time of the year, but in the dead of winter, they thought I should be imprisoned. And when I would, you know, return back at home in Canada, and my kids would sleep in the stroller because they were so used to doing it here in, like, you know, minus 15, minus 18, and my dad was just standing by the door like, are they breathing? Are they breathing? But it's so safe here. I can turn around and make sure, trust that my kid is still going to be there, still going to be safe. It is a fantastic country and a fantastic city to raise kids in. And I think that I take it for granted. My whole adult life has been here. My kids were born here, so I don't actually have a different experience than raising my kids in Finland. But I do think that there's a lot of benefits that I don't realize how good they are compared to other parts of the world.
What would you say, Henri, like to breaking that crust in your case? What for example, or just as an idea, is there something that every exchange student is told so that he manages better in groups? Or
well, I think that we basically tell them that, you know, just be brave and you know, start talking with Finnish people, because they, you know, it might take some time, as Ashley pointed out, but you know, it's worthwhile. So when you get there, when you get the communication started, then they're really friendly basically, and you can get like good and long-lasting friendships. And that's what we also try to do with the exchange students every year. We have a lot of different activities and courses planned that, you know, well, not so hidden agenda, but one of the agendas is actually exactly to get them like to bond with the Finnish students. Like, you know, there is this phenomenon called the Erasmus bubble, that, you know, exchange students, they come here and they end up in hanging around with other Erasmus students, and then the local students are hanging around with local students, and that, you know, this is a global phenomenon. So we're kind of like trying to mix these two student populations with each other the best we can. And there are also like a lot of these different services, for example, the SIMHE services for immigrants in higher education, and they're organizing, for example, these like guidance counseling for students, you know, to make them better, make the higher education more accessible to them. There's also like Finnish language training courses that they're offering, also teaching sessions or training sessions for teachers and guidance counselors, so that they know better how to, you know, deal with different cultures and people from different cultural backgrounds. So a lot of work is being put into this area as well. And from my point of view, I think that it's you know, getting better all the time, and it's already like at a really nice level. And coming back to these like stereotypes that Finnish people are like, you know, shy and quiet and all that. So I would also say that it's a lot like, it's a generational thing really. And young people, you know, based on my experiences, I think that they're starting to move away from that quite heavily. Like a lot of the people that we have here at the university, for example, the exchange student, they tell us that, you know, the Finnish people, they're not that shy, you know. I was kind of like expecting that they would be more shy or quiet, but they're not at all, you know. So that's what many people are surprised at.
Yeah, and in our company we've had now 3 guys from outside the EU move full-time to Finland, and then we have had summer interns from inside the EU, and it's a interesting mix of people we work with cameras, basically old cameras, so everyone is excited about cameras. But then there are like 50-year-olds, old masters who barely speak English, and then there are young guys that are very fluent in English in Finland, the Finnish guys, and one thing obviously that we've noticed that connects people is working together, and then also having shared passions, shared hobbies, wanting to go photograph all the lighthouse now that the lake is frozen. You can walk on a lake when it's frozen, by the way, if you didn't know. But yeah, so and then the biggest one, obviously, which is the biggest one? No. Sauna.
Well, yes, of course.
Yes.
Because you can't sit next to somebody on a bus,
no.
But you can sit next to them butt naked.
Yes, almost on top of them, maybe, butt naked.
Super normal.
If there's a lot of people in the sauna, it's okay, know. And as long as you don't have to look at each other in the eye, you can talk so much as possible. And all saunas are basically designed so that you don't have to look at each other. So, but yeah, I mean, every international person in coming to Finland needs sauna buddies, and as fast as possible, because that's the biggest way to integrate, in my opinion. But there might be some other opinions also. What would you say is good to break the crust?
I think just it's any shared experience. Finland does love like all kinds of physical activities. So whether it's sauna or whether it's going for a run or going to the gym, but it can be anything. It can be a class that you take together. It can be working together, whatever. Just having something to bring you together to create a mutual experience so that it levels the bar and it makes it easier to then kind of open up and start talking.
But it has to be something. This is a very key Finnish culture thing.
Yes.
You cannot be just like, hey, would you hang out?
No, because then that's very non-specific and
and that might be a trouble for someone.
Yeah,
that's also exactly what we do in one of the courses that I'm actually coordinating. It's called Each One Teach One, and the idea in that course is that there are like students coming from all kinds of countries, and let's say that there's somebody from China who comes here, and of course when they are here they want to learn a bit of like Finnish language to help them survive the everyday life, and then there might be people here, Finnish people, who are interested in Chinese. So we kind of like pair these students up, and then they set some learning goals for themselves. It can be like language related or then cultural related or both, preferably. And then what they do, they basically do all kinds of activities together. They can go to a restaurant, they can cook together, go and see an ice hockey match, or go to sauna together. And at the same time, learn the languages, talk about cultures, and then they reflect on their learning. So this is one of the courses that we organize, and it's exactly like that have some shared experiences, do stuff together, and that really helps.
I think one of the things that you said that's important to know is that Finns are actually naturally curious, and there's a really deep respect for learning. So even though it might not be that they're openly willing to approach you and say, hey, I want to know about you, they do. They really are naturally curious. And so understanding that where you come from and your story and what you know is actually valuable, that's a really good talking point, that Finns do want to hear about you and they do want to kind of open up their understanding of the world. So not trying to just be Finnish, not trying to make yourself quiet, not trying to make yourself reserved just because that's the culture. Finns really do appreciate experiencing who you are and your culture and what you come from. So bring that to the table. See that as a strength and really share it with people because they do appreciate it.
And if you're an introvert,
then you're good.
Then you're good. This is your heaven.
Yes.
Basically, that's my experience from the guys that we worked with, is that if you're introvert, you like it.
It's heaven.
Because it's everything is perfect for an introvert. If you're an extrovert, there are some challenges, but then you probably find a job in marketing.
Yeah.
Because that's what we suck at in terms of
That's true.
But yeah, okay. Any last words that you would like to say for someone moving to Tampere or thinking about moving to Tampere or coming to study for a year or few years? The mic is yours.
I think if you just have a really open mind and come with zero expectations, you'll be golden here. I mean, like I said, I came here send me to a country that I would never choose to go on vacation. You will have adventures, you will be confused a lot of the time, but if you see it as like, this is gonna be fun and I'm gonna learn something about this culture, I'm gonna learn something about myself, this is a really great place to do that.
Yep. I don't have anything special to add, but if you're thinking about coming here, just do it. I mean, it's gonna be worthwhile. I promise.
And with that bombshell, it's time to end, like they would say on Top Gear. Have a nice rest of your life, or if you're living in Tampere, just have a, make this your home. Make Finnish people help you. They actually want to help you. It's just that they want to, and we are a bit odd. But till that next time. Bye bye.
Bye.